Jim McBride covers the Bruins for the Boston Globe. We used to have him on talking about the Patriots. Now he's talking about the Bruins. He joins us on the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline. Mr. McBride, hello, sir.
Good morning, guys. Just hopped out of my Joe Rogan ice bath, and I feel good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're going to get so cut. That's all you got to do is you just got to get into the cold water, and for all your problems will be solved, my friend. That's the secret to life. That's why the Vikings lived forever. I mean, all the Norwegian people, they lived forever. All right. So the Bruins are in an interesting position. You read about the trade deadline. First of all, what do you make of this post All-Star break lull they've been in? Does it concern you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that they've played better as of late, but the late game, losing leads late in the game is really coming back to haunt them, and I think that's more concerning than anything. The results in overtime don't bother me as much because once you get to the postseason, it's 5-on-5. It's not that fire wagon 3-on-3 business that they do during the regular season, but actually teams forcing them to overtime is what's concerning because guys are playing a lot more minutes.
So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how the Bruins last year were finding ways to win games. And even when they didn't play well, they were having some late game bursts, or you'd get some heroics from Pasternak or Marchand. Is it a lack of those late game heroics, do you think, Jim, that's factoring into some of these losses, especially the overtime and shootout losses? Is it something that's missing, spark wise, or is it more personnel and something deeper than that?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lack of that at times, but I think in the Stars game last week, you saw, Pasta score late, and then, they went 9 rounds in the shootout, and they ended up scoring. So they have a little bit of that, but I think it's just overuse of some of the personnel. Some of their top players like Marchand, like Coyle, Zacha, those guys are playing a lot on the penalty kill. I think you need to get some contributions from other guys in those areas so that when you are 5-on-5 or you're in power play, you get to use those guys and they're a little bit fresher. So I think maybe expanding the guys that are on the penalty kill, which was so effective earlier in this year and has kind of fallen off lately. And I think that's just because of wear and tear on some of your best players.
How much is the injury to Hampus Lindholm hurting this team? I know Grzelcyk was down for a while. They're playing guys that don't ordinarily play, and there have been some games where they've had to play 5 defensemen for basically 3 periods in overtime. How much is this bothering this team?
Yeah, it's very concerning because, the defensive core as a whole hasn't played like they did last year. I think, Grzelcyk and Forbort both haven't played up to last year's standards, and I think a lot of that's injury related. But I think Hampus Lindholm's injury, it's really key because if he's out for a longer period of time, I think they make a big move at the trade deadline because they can use his money. If it's a shorter injury, then that's probably necessitates a lesser move at the deadline because of their, the cap situation. But, certainly when you take your number 2 defenseman, a guy that plays 23, 24 minutes a game out of the mix, that's going to hurt. So, I think his injury is kind of the key, kind of holds the key to the trade deadline for the Bruins.
Okay, I wanted to get to that because Noah Hanifin, defenseman, Boston ties. I'm being told he wants to be in Boston. Last year of his contract, the Bruins got what I believe you described in the Boston Globe as an assload of cap money going into next year. But $20 million in cap space with all the free agents. Grzelcyk, DeBrusk, Forbort, Shattenkirk, Lucic, Van Riemsdyk, Heinen, and the great Anthony Richard. But they have all this cap money. Could they deal for Hanifin? Could he force a deal to Boston because of his ties here? Is that something that could happen? And if so, how much would it improve this team?
Yeah, a ton, because he's the big fish out there, right? He's the guy that a lot of teams that are defensive needy are looking at. He probably could force his hand to Boston, much in the way Taylor Hall did a couple of years ago. I've heard rumors too that he really wants to play here. Fitting him under the cap for the rest of this year would be a little difficult. They need some help. Maybe Calgary, absorbs a little bit of the money or a third team. Signing him beyond that, that's probably not a problem because they, like you said, they have the assload of money to spend for next year.
Thank you, Jim, for going to Queen's English with me. Thank you. Glad to lead you in the gutter.
Exactly. So it's it could be a situation like like Lindholm 2 years ago when they traded for him, and then the next day they signed him to an extension. So if they could do something like that, I think it could work for them, absolutely. And I think, I have heard also that Noah would love to play back in Boston where he's from. So that's interesting to keep an eye on. Now, what would they give up for him to kind of get him, here? Maybe Calgary uses that to their advantage. To say, we won't deal him anywhere else, but we want a little something extra from you. And the Bruins do not have a ton of capital to give up.
Would you trade Jake DeBrusk off this roster to get a deal like that done?
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, he's in kind of the same situation as Hanifin.
Yeah. Why would they want him?
Restricted guy too.
Yeah, they wouldn't want him. They would be doing the Bruins a favor by taking DeBrusk because they'd be taking the salary off their hands. But it would be.
They would almost even swap, and then you'd have to wonder why Calgary would want that.
Yeah, so you would be talking about a 2025 first-round pick, Patra. Do the Bruins have enough to even swing a trade like that? I mean, we've been talking about it. Do you think they have enough?
I think they have enough, but I think it would completely decimate their system if they did. If you're talking, Patra or Mason Lohrei or Fabian Lysell, if you're giving up two of those three, then you're really killing your farm system basically.
Yeah, they'd be blowing. Well, they've been doing that for years, so they'd be really blowing things up.
And
do you think it's worth taking the shot if you can keep Hanifin around for 8 years after this?
Yeah, absolutely. If he's a rental, no, I wouldn't give up a ton for him. But if you have that wink, like the next day after we trade for him, I'm going to sign him to this extension. I think it's definitely worth it because he's a proven commodity, 200-foot defenseman. So yeah, I think that would be a great play. Then you have in your stable McAvoy, Lindholm, and Hanifin. Those are three really good defensemen.
Yeah, it'd be fun to hear Felger lose his mind, too, because they'd be signing a local kid for reasons other than him being local. Felger hates that. It's like, oh, he's from here. And it's like, who cares? Well, it's Noah Hanifin, and you care. Well, the fact that he's from Norwood is just,
Well, that would be like saying I don't want football players from Florida or Texas. They're not growing them in Arizona generally.
Right.
Like if you're from North America, you're from Canada, Minnesota, Michigan, or Massachusetts.
What? Right.
Sign me up for any deal that drives Mike Felger crazy.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'll tell you, I think he's a grump.
And a bit of a contrarian.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I won't even get into the goalie talk with you at all because I still think they missed the boat by not moving Lena Solmark earlier. But after you wrote 50,000 words about goalie Bob over the weekend, I'm sure you wouldn't entertain any talk about these two guys not being here and intimately involved going forward. Is that really going to happen, do you think, Jim? They're going to rotate these guys throughout the rest of the season and more importantly in the postseason?
Yeah, every time we've broached that subject with Monty, he's kind of stuck to the plan that he's definitely open to that. It didn't work last year, but I think people forget that Linus went into those playoffs a little banged up because he got hurt late in the season. So if one of these guys emerges.
I'm sorry, Jim, but it also felt like they had their hand forced when they did the switch last year, and it wasn't by design. They did it when they thought they needed to. This year, as Montgomery said, they're going to do it. Regardless, if somebody gets a win, then it doesn't really matter. It's time for the other guy to go.
Yeah, and if what happens over the next month before the playoffs start, or actually before the trade deadline, if they're really struggling and they think they need to move Allmark, I think they will. I don't think they want to because both these guys give them a chance to win every single night. But if they're getting to the point where they're not scoring any goals or their defense is absolutely killing them and they need to move a guy, then I think Allmark does get moved. But I don't think they want to, but I think they will if they have to.
Right. It just sucks that there's the history of that is just you don't get any return on goaltenders. It's always and we went through the exercise before, and it's just like they're just not valued. It seems in the trade market. So it
might be a move. It might be a move just to kind of get rid of that $5 million salary rather than
Right. It would be a shame though to give up a Vezina guy to just clear cap space, but maybe they'll have to if they want to make other improvements.
By the way, the goalie Bob piece is really good, Jim. Just because if goalie Bob is one of those names that's like, I know who he is, I know what he does, but I really don't know anything about it. And then I read your thing. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it a little bit more. I know him as more than just a name and what he did. Now I understand it more. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think it was fitting that Bonus gave him the name because he's kind of hilarious as well.
Yeah.
There you go. Jim McBride covers the Bruins for the Globe. Thank you, as always, sir, for your service and time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we
Thanks,
appreciate
Jim.
it.
See you, Jim.